There are so many ways to animate paint for different effects. In this video, I'll show you the 3 essential techniques that work with any application, digital or analog, as I put together this animated logo. I'm animating this logo for one of my favorite painting channels, Marriott. He is an amazing oil painter who uses traditional techniques for just incredible results. I've been painting a lot lately, so he's been a huge inspiration. My idea was to start with a close-up of a single brushstroke being painted, then that turning into a flurry of brushstrokes, and finally a reveal to that clean logo. For that end section with the final logo, I will use the most useful technique, a looping boil, which is where you make multiple versions of your stroke or design and put them in a sequence. The imperfections between each stroke make the animation move and feel alive. Animators call this a boil. You can use digital brushes or scan actual painted brushstrokes. 4 to 6 frames is ideal, otherwise it just looks too choppy. If you want more energy and chaos, make them more different from one another. If you want them more smooth, make them more similar. That all depends on your goal and your patience. I really like using these looping brushstroke elements for textured shading to contrast with clean vector shapes, like this. I've actually got a brush pack full of these that you can download for free in the description that you can use in all of your textured projects. Another way to apply boil without crafting individual frames is to apply a slight distortion over everything using a turbulent displace effect in After Effects. Set the size and the amount low and animate the random seed so that the distortion's different every frame. And I've done a full video just about that technique. For the first close-up animated brushstroke in the animation, I'm going to animate the process of the paint being applied. This is where each frame is the progression of the paint, a sequence of it being painted. I use the same technique for this spray paint effect in this animation. I used multiple scans of spray paint and put them in a sequence from smallest to largest. These are from texturelabs.org, without a doubt the best free texture resource and go-to YouTube channel. It is a really fun and easy way to build textured elements. A quick and dirty trick to get a similar effect is to just screen record yourself painting digitally and turn off your cursor visibility in OBS. Or heck, leave the cursor on. Embrace the digital artifacts of the process. They actually do this in the title sequence for the show Synanthrope, and it looks amazing. Another technique is to use these sequences as mats to reveal other elements. We can use that previous technique to fill a larger area, piece by piece, over several frames, and select that sequence as a luma mat. This also looks great with multiple versions stacked on top of one another and offset, to turn something static into something pretty exciting without much effort at all. For this logo animation, I wanted to take all of those techniques and push them further by painting every frame IRL, then combine them in After Effects. I started by creating a rough animation as a guide. At the start is just extending a straight stroke, simple enough. Then for the frantic brushstrokes, this is a very fun and suspiciously easy process. I started with a line as the guide path that the brushstrokes are going to follow and drew long sausages along that line, varying their length to change the speed. For faster speed, longer sausages. For a slower speed, shorter sausages, moving just a little ahead of the previous one. I had that resolve into the final logo with a few frames of the paint moving upwards to fill that skull shape. I took all of those frames, exported them as a PNG sequence, and lined them up on a single A3 sheet of paper, with 6 versions of the final skull so I could loop and boil those as I needed. Then transferred them to a canvas board using a carbon paper so I knew where to paint. It does look subtle over the black, but I could still see it very faintly. I wanted the paint to really stick out in 3 dimensions, to really feel really real, so I tested some materials first. I had acrylic paint, oil paint, gesso, gel medium, modeling paste, and toothpaste. The modeling paste, cheapest available, was by far the best. First, the opening, zoomed in on a single stroke, which I couldn't get the size I wanted in focus with my current camera lens. I don't have a macro lens, they are expensive, but I do have these, which are cheap as chips macro extension tubes, which you can add to your camera lens to get it to zoom in further and focus at a shorter distance. It is not perfect, the edges do get well blurry, so for the longer brush strokes I combined 2 different shots for the front and back of the stroke, and I had to get so close to the brush strokes that they were practically touching the lens. The rest of the frames were much simpler to paint and photograph. I put them together in a sequence in After Effects, and here's what that looked like raw. Which is a bit much. So then I masked out a solid black layer over the top to only reveal the strokes I wanted, and added a curves effect to increase the contrast. A few of the first paint strokes were boiling a bit too much for my liking, so I adjusted those frames with the warp tool in Photoshop and removed some of the messier brushwork. This one little bit though worked well, as I felt it was kind of flicking around as the brushstroke turned, so I kept that one in. The whole point was to make it feel hand animated, so I don't want to go and clean that all away by being super precise. I still needed to resolve this to the finished clean vector logo, including the M and the 8 that I hadn't painted. So I created a matte to reveal them, by painting a few frames of a semicircle getting larger with brushy textured edges. Using curves again, I boosted the contrast so it would work as a luma matte, and used that to reveal the skull logo and each of the letters. The great thing about creating textures by hand from scratch for projects like this is that not only do I get a custom matte created for this project, but now I have this that I can use in every other project I want. I can simply click it and drag it into the next project. I also received, from across the world, this incredible painting of the prehistoric Foros Racus, painted by Jan Maitart himself. I adore paleo art, so this is now one of my most prized possessions. You can see him paint the whole thing on his channel. If you are at all into painting, you should subscribe. No one is doing it like him on YouTube. I added a bit of a looping texture over the top of everything, a slow zoom out, and it was finished. For some effects, it is worth going the extra mile and getting the paints out for something like this, but the most important thing that's going to help you in every project you make is a solid foundational knowledge of the fundamentals. The principal techniques of motion, timing, spacing, what to move where. Not just how to move it, but why you would move things in a certain way to get the result you want. And that's exactly what I teach in my course, Motion Foundation. I designed it to be the best introduction point to learn the world of motion design. Not only learning the software skills, but the application of animation principles. Not just how to turn dials in After Effects, but how to use motion to tell your story and get the result you want, whether that is flat and graphic or rich with texture. Enrollments are open at benmarriott.com.